Describe the transformations which can be used to map the curve y equals x squared to the curve y equals minus 2 x plus 1 squared plus 3. Sketch the curve y equals x squared and the image at each stage of the transformations. Starting with the curve y equals x squared, we perform the following transformations. So we're going to start off with the graph of y equals x squared, which is this curve here. Stretch the curve by a factor of 2 parallel to the y-axis. This gives the curve y equals 2x squared. So that gives us this curve here. So what has happened is every y value has been multiplied by 2. So if we look at it over here on this diagram, so we can see that the blue line is the graph of y equals x squared, and the red curve is the graph of y equals 2x squared. So each y value has been multiplied by 2. So say for example this coordinate here, which is the point 1, 1, the y value has been multiplied by 2, giving us the point 1, 2. Then let's say this point here, which is 2, 4. The point on the graph y equals 2x squared would be 2, 8. So the y value would be multiplied by 2. So the 4 would be multiplied by 2, which would give us 8. So 2, 8. So y equals x squared is our original graph. And y equals 2x squared is our new graph. And what has happened is the curve has been stretched by a factor of 2 parallel to the y-axis. So it's basically been made skinnier, it's been stretched. Part 2, reflect this curve in the x-axis. This is known as inversion. This gives the curve y equals minus 2x squared. So we started off with y equals x squared, and then we got the graph of y equals 2x squared, which is the pink curve. And now we need to reflect this curve in the x-axis. So we end up with this curve here. So it's the exact same curve as the one above, but it's been reflected in the x-axis. So this is the curve of y equals minus 2x squared. So if we see, this is the original curve y equals x squared, and this curve has been stretched by a factor of 2 and reflected in the x-axis. So this is the curve of minus 2x squared. Step 3, translate this curve horizontally by a distance of minus 1. This involves substituting x minus minus 1, which equals x plus 1, in the equation of the curve, giving the curve y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared. So since we have plus 1 and it's inside the bracket, we are moving one step to the left. So in our last step we had this curve here, which is y equals minus 2x squared, and moving one step to the left, we move over by one step and we end up with this curve, which is y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared, which is this pink curve here. So it's been moved one step to the left. So its maximum point had been 0, 0. Now its maximum point is minus 1, 0. So one step to the left because we've plus 1 inside the bracket. So on this graph we can see this was the original curve, y equals x squared. So it's been stretched by scale factor 2, reflected in the x-axis, and now it's been moved over by one step. Part 4, translate this curve vertically by a distance of 3. This gives the required curve y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared plus 3. So since we have a plus 3 and it's outside the bracket, we're moving our graph up, and it's by 3 steps. So this was the curve that we drawn in the last step, and now what we have to do is move it upwards by 3 steps. So we're going to end up with this curve here. So this point, this maximum point, gets moved up by 1, 2, 3 steps. And we end up at this curve here. So this is the curve of minus 2 times x plus 1 squared plus 3. So again, this was our original y equals x squared graph. And now this is our final graph. So this is the final place of our graph. So this is the curve of y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared plus 3. So again, we started off with y equals x squared. We stretched the graph, so we made it skinnier by a scale factor of 2. Then we reflected it in the x-axis. Then we moved it over by 1 step to the left. And then we moved it up by 3 steps. So if we have a look at our equation again, we started off with the 2 in front, so multiplying every y value by 2. So we started off with y equals x squared, and we went to y equals 2x squared. Then what we did was we took into account the minus in front of the 2, which means that we reflected it in the x-axis. So then we had y equals minus 2x squared. Then we moved it 1 step to the left because of this plus 1 inside the bracket. So then we had this graph here, which is y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared. And then we did the plus 3 at the end, which means we moved it upwards by 3 steps. And this is where we finished. Y equals minus 2 times x plus 1 squared plus 3. It will be a good idea when doing questions like this to start off with the number that is in front of the bracket first, so do the stretching part first. Then if you need to reflect it, do the reflection part next. And then what's inside the bracket and what's outside the bracket, it doesn't matter too much which part comes next, so long as you do the stretching part first.